The restaurant was quiet that night, the kind of silence that hangs in the air after a long day of clattering dishes, laughter, and hurried footsteps. The staff had finished their shifts, the chairs were neatly tucked in, and the lights glowed softly in warm amber tones. Yet in one booth, near the corner, someone remained. She was a new hire, the waitress who had just joined the team, and she had fallen asleep with her head resting on her arm, exhaustion written all over her face. Her uniform was simple, a blouse rolled up at the sleeves and a skirt that had seen better days, but her quiet vulnerability carried a story most people never saw. What she didn't know was that the man walking through the dining room wasn't just another customer, nor just a manager checking in. He was the CEO of the entire restaurant chain, a self-made millionaire who had built his empire from nothing, but had chosen to go undercover that week to see the truth of how his business really operated. He had been watching her, not in judgment, but with curiosity. She wasn't like the others. While some staff complained, cut corners, or rushed through tasks, she worked tirelessly, always polite, always giving more than anyone expected. He had seen her carry trays heavier than her small frame should have managed, cover for absent coworkers without a word, and smile at customers even when her eyes revealed how tired she was. Tonight, she hadn't even made it home before exhaustion claimed her. At first, he thought of waking her gently and reminding her it wasn't safe to sleep in the restaurant after hours. But something stopped him. He looked closer and noticed the calluses on her hands, the fraying stitching of her skirt, and the way her wrist bore faint marks, as if she worked more than one job. In that moment, the millionaire who had everything was struck by the quiet resilience of someone who had so little. He sat across from her for a while, studying the woman who had unknowingly become a lesson for him. Most people assumed success was built by ambition, but here was someone who embodied a different kind of strength: endurance, humility, and the refusal to quit even when life gave every reason to. After a while, she stirred, blinking in confusion as she realized someone was sitting opposite her. Embarrassed, she straightened, mumbling apologies for dozing off, worried she would be reprimanded or worse, fired. Instead, the man smiled and asked her name. Hesitant, she gave it, her voice quiet, as though expecting disapproval. He asked why she had fallen asleep there, and after some hesitation, she admitted she worked 2 other part-time jobs just to afford rent and help her younger brother through school. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. It had just happened. He listened without interrupting, each word carving into him deeper than the last. He remembered his own early days, sleeping in his car, working odd jobs while chasing a dream everyone doubted. The difference was, he had caught his break, and she hadn't, at least not yet. That night, he revealed himself, not as another supervisor, but as the CEO. She stared in disbelief, thinking perhaps she had misheard. But he assured her it was true, and then told her something that left her speechless. Her job at the restaurant was secure, but more than that, he was promoting her immediately, not because of pity, but because of the strength and dedication she had shown. He offered to personally mentor her, to bring her into management training, and to help her brother with school fees. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, her tired mind unable to process the kindness of someone so powerful. The staff who later learned of this moment were stunned. This millionaire, known for his tough business sense, had shown a level of compassion that no one expected. But for him, it wasn't charity, it was recognition. He saw in her the very qualities that had built his empire: hard work, sacrifice, and heart. The story spread, and people everywhere were reminded that success isn't measured just by numbers on a balance sheet, but by the lives one chooses to impact. For the young waitress, that night became the turning point of her life. She walked into the restaurant simply a worker, exhausted and unnoticed, but walked out with hope, opportunity, and the belief that sometimes the right people notice when you think the world never will. And for the undercover CEO, he left with a renewed understanding of his purpose, not just to run restaurants, but to recognize and reward the hidden heroes within them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a story that begins in a place we all know well, a simple restaurant where the smell of food lingers long after the last plate is served, where laughter and conversation echo until the lights dim and silence replaces the clamor of the day, and where one night, after the crowd had left and the tables had been wiped clean, a young waitress sat down in a booth, weary from a long shift, and before she knew it, sleep claimed her. She wasn't lazy, she wasn't careless, she was simply exhausted, because this wasn't the only job she worked. It was one of 3, and every penny mattered because her younger brother was counting on her to put him through school. The rent was due, the bills were piling, and she carried the weight of survival on her slender shoulders. She thought no one was watching, she thought it was just another night in the shadows of her struggle, but what she didn't know was that someone else was in that restaurant, someone she least expected, a man in a suit who appeared to be just another customer, or perhaps a manager checking in. But in truth, he was the CEO, the owner of the very chain of restaurants where she worked, and not just an owner but a millionaire, a man who had built his empire from nothing and chosen to go undercover to see how his people lived, how his business truly breathed behind the polished reports and glossy numbers. When he saw her asleep at that booth, his first thought could have been discipline. After all, falling asleep at work is unacceptable in most eyes. But instead of rushing to judgment, he paused, and in that pause something powerful happened. He looked at her closely, the fraying edge of her uniform, the calluses on her hands, the way her posture revealed not carelessness but sheer exhaustion. And in that moment he was reminded of himself many years ago, when he too had nothing but grit and determination, when he had slept in his car, chasing a dream the world said was impossible. He sat down across from her, and when she woke startled, embarrassed, apologizing profusely as if she had committed a crime, he did not scold her. He asked her name, he asked her story, and she told him in fragments, quietly, as though ashamed of her struggle, that she was simply trying to survive, simply trying to give her brother a chance at a life better than her own. And in that booth, in that conversation, he realized something that numbers on a spreadsheet could never show him. He realized that the heart of his company, the true engine of his success, lay not in profit margins or quarterly reports, but in the quiet resilience of people like her, the unsung heroes who kept the doors open, the plates full, and the customers smiling. And then he did something no one expected. He revealed his true identity, not to intimidate her, but to show her that her hard work had not gone unseen, that her sacrifice mattered, and he offered her not pity, but opportunity. He offered her a secure position, a path into management, mentorship, under his own guidance, and even assistance to ensure her brother could continue his studies. She could barely believe it, her eyes wide with disbelief, because when you spend your life struggling in silence, you rarely expect miracles, but that night became her miracle. Word spread through the company, through the community, and beyond, that an undercover CEO had seen in a weary waitress the qualities that build empires: dedication, humility, resilience, and unshakable strength. And people were shocked, not because of the money he spent, but because of humanity he displayed. Now let me tell you why this matters to every single one of us in this room, because too often in life we walk past people like her. Too often we measure success by the numbers in our bank accounts, the size of our office, the car we drive, forgetting that the true measure of leadership is not how high we climb, but how many we lift while we are climbing. That CEO remembered where he came from. He remembered the nights he too was overlooked. And he chose to be the kind of leader who recognizes potential, even when it is hidden beneath fatigue and worn-out clothes. We are all given chances to do the same, maybe not with millions of dollars, maybe not with corporate promotions, but with our awareness, with our compassion, with our ability to see someone not for where they are but for who they can become. So I ask you, the next time you see someone struggling, will you look away, or will you look closer? Will you dismiss them as lazy, or will you ask what weight they carry? Will you guard your success for yourself, or will you use it to open doors for someone who thinks the world has forgotten them? That CEO shocked everyone, but the truth is he should not have shocked us at all, because leadership, true leadership, is not about power. It is about service. It is not about being at the top. It is about being the one who lifts others when they are at the bottom. And if you carry that spirit into your workplace, your community, and your life, you will not only change someone else's story, you will change your own. Remember this tonight. Somewhere right now a young woman is falling asleep after a long shift. A young man is wondering if his hard work will ever be noticed. A child is waiting for a chance that seems out of reach. And you may be the one who holds the power to transform their tomorrow with a single act of recognition, a single act of kindness, a single decision to lead not with authority, but with humanity. That is the story of the Undercover CEO. And that is the call to all of us, to see the unseen, to lift the weary, and to remember that the greatest wealth we will ever possess is the impact we have on the lives around us.